Hello and welcome to the Raymond Sims Show for August 18th, 2014. I'm Raymond Sims. Today I'm going to talk to you about why Chicago is the best basketball city ever, why I'm making another sports season resolution, and how polls can sometimes double as lightning rods. But before we get into that, just want to let you know that this show is brought to you by simscoliseum.com, so be sure to check out that site. A lot of great stuff on there and on the way. Also, be sure to check out Sims Coliseum on Twitter, Facebook, and Tumblr. And then also be sure to like and subscribe. Like this video and subscribe to Coliseum Sports Network with a lot of great stuff that's already been going on and also on the way. The Coliseum Baseball Tournament regional portion just wrapped up. You got the Tigers coming out of the East and the Astros coming out of the West. They'll meet up for the Coliseum Baseball Championship Series. That will be going all of this week. Or it's a best of 5, so at least 3 games will be played, and it'll be a lot of fun. Those games will be posted each evening, so be on the lookout for that. But now let's get to the show, and I start off by talking about why the city I live in, Chicago, is the greatest basketball city ever. We found that out on literally the international stage, even though it's just in preseason form. USA Basketball beginning their string of exhibition games started off in Chicago. They'll have 2 in New York City, and then they'll move on to Gran Canaria, Spain, and play an exhibition game there as well. The one in Chicago had USA Basketball taking on Brazil, and they were able to get the win 95-78. Now, where does the Chicago component come from? Well, the game was in Chicago, as I mentioned, which had a great turnout and a lot of fans there. So there's already 1 star in favor of Chicago. And then also you have 2 Chicago products completely showing out on the floor for the home crowd. You have Anthony Davis, who was the big headliner from the game, as he should be. Went to high school here in Chicago, grew up near the United Center. Not sure if it was the west side, south side, or north side, or wherever. But he's from Chicago. Scored 20 points, had 8 rebounds, and 5 blocks in 26 minutes of play. So he essentially went out of his mind here in this preseason game. He's really been showing a lot of hustle. He's been a USA team member since the London Olympics, but he was the lone college player, the Christian Laettner of the team, if you will. He did not get a lot of tick back then, but he's developed over the years, and now here he is. And with all the defections that the USA basketball team has had, be it for injury or for personal choice, a lot of stars missing, Anthony Davis has the opportunity to step up. He did just that against Brazil, and he looked really good. He was all over the place, both on offense and defense. He was going for lobs. He was grabbing rebounds. Obviously, he put up shots, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 5 blocks. And then one other thing that he did was that he dove. He dove for loose balls. He was hustling for the ball. There was one instance where he had to jump into the crowd to try to save a ball. And that part is very huge for me. Not just because it shows Davis is a dominant, hungry player, which it does, but also it's very important that he did that coming off of what happened the last time the USA basketball team played in front of a large crowd. That happened in Las Vegas. That was just a little over a week ago. Yeah, about a little over a week ago, if I recall correctly. And they were playing a intra-team scrimmage. And, of course, Paul George was challenging a layup. Happens all the time in basketball. Even if you're not going to, get it, actually block the shot, you at least try. And because, if you do actually get the block, it's going to be very amazing. Going to be a chase down block. And, those end up on Sports Center. Paul George went for one, slammed his leg against the scansion at the Thomas and Mack Center, where the scansions are actually closer to the court than is recommended, 1, and 2 is found in most other arenas that these basketball players play in. So he ended up feeling the brunt of that. He is out for the USA basketball team, and he's out for the Pacers in 2014, 2015. So a speedy recovery to him. But after something like that, and it was a gruesome injury, so much so that ESPN only wanted to like show the replays like just once so people saw, and then they wouldn't show them again. It was that gruesome, that bad. It was really a scary moment for a lot of people. At the time, for me, I wasn't as on edge as everybody else was. I wasn't as freaked out about it. I figured George was going to be fine, at least from a personal standpoint. And from the interviews he's had, he's fine. He felt a lot of pain, of course, but he's just going to go ahead, go through the physical therapy, go through the healing process, and he should be good to go in 2015. But it left a lot of people on edge, that injury, as you would expect it to. So you wonder what the mentality would be for the players who actually have to go out and keep playing. Of course, immediately after the Paul George situation, and on that night, I know sports radio, and even leading, because it happened on a Friday, so you had all weekend to talk about it, and then sports radio, the Monday show, or the weekday shows, had to bring it up on Monday. There was a lot of calls to end professional participation in USA basketball. And I thought that was absurd then. But you kind of could understand where people were coming from. They don't want their guys getting hurt. They're worried about these players getting hurt. So if everybody else around them is worried, you have to imagine that there's a more concern on the players that actually have to go out and play. And when you see Anthony Davis going for the loose balls like he did and dove into the crowd, fell into like the second row the way he did, and I think James Harden also did that once as well, that says something, that these guys are not going to let a freak injury scare them, much in the same way that Paul George is not scared by this freak injury. He's going to try to heal himself as efficiently and as quickly as possible. And so the players are showing that they have this mentality, this strong mentality, that they're going to go out there and they're going to play hard, and they're not going to let one thing deter them from doing what they want to do, and that's one, represent their country, and two, represent their country with a gold medal. So I thought that was great, both for Anthony Davis and for USA basketball and their mentality moving forward. The other Chicago guy that made a huge difference was Derrick Rose. Or not so much a huge difference, because his stat line was 7 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists in 24 minutes, which puzzled me because when I watched the game, I thought he was all over the place. I thought he was completely showing out. Apparently not, but he really opened my eyes to what to expect this coming season upon his return for the second time. While his stat line is not one that would be eye-popping to somebody who didn't watch the game and just looked at the box score, or if you're a very contrarian sports talk host, you could probably twist the stat line into something. There was a lot to like out of Derrick Rose. He went 10 games into the 2013-14 season before getting injured again, and it was very clear he was not coming back. There was controversy the first time around, no controversy this second time. He's going to sit the rest of the year out. So he had plenty of time to, get back into game shape and heal and focus his game so that he could prepare both for USA basketball and for the Chicago Bulls this season. And a lot of the talk around the water cooler, around the kickbacks here in Chicago. And if you don't know what a kickback is, it's like a small party with friends. I'm not sure how far Chicago slang tends to reach nationally, so figured I'd clear that up now. At the kickback, at the water cooler, at the bar, the question was, is Derrick Rose going to be the same guy he is when he comes back? And the answer is apparently yeah. I was of the belief that he would understand the stakes. He's going to be the guy when he comes back, but he would not want to get hurt again. Because when he gets hurt, no one feels the pain more, both physically and emotionally, than Derrick Rose. I believe that. He's a competitor, so when he is not playing, it bothers him more than it bothers us. And we have been roseless for a good chunk of the 2 seasons here. So when that says something, when I feel like it affects him more. Of course it would, because it's his body and this is a game he loves that he plays hard. However, I thought that in order to combat that chance of hurting himself again, he would change up his game to a more mid-range or perimeter style type of offense, where he would not be crashing into the lane and moving and contorting himself in ways that you would not think are humanly possible, the way that we saw Dwayne Wade do in his career, or Derrick Rose early on, of course, even Gerald Wallace in a less flashier type of way, where he would just fall all over the place and he'd drive through the lane and slash and just flail all around and end up on the ground while getting an and one. I thought those days were over for Derrick Rose. But somebody didn't tell Derrick Rose that, because that's exactly what he was doing out there in Chicago on Friday, and he looked good doing it. So, if he has the confidence to go back for a second time to do the same thing that he was doing, if he feels that his explosiveness was not necessarily the cause for his injury, or if he understood that it was the cause of his injury, but he's not worried about it happening again, that type of confidence, I can get behind that. Now, I'm going to have to see some production here, and we'll see how this explosiveness really works here on the international stage. And that'll definitely give him some momentum leading into the NBA season. One little aside here, going back to what I was talking about with Paul George, in my opinion on that, I'm sure that after Paul George, the other person that affected much more was Derrick Rose. Or not much more than George, but much more than the average person was Derrick Rose going through the injuries. Granted, he did not suffer from a freak injury. He hurt his ACL, so not so much a freak injury, just an unfortunate injury for Rose. But just seeing somebody go down and the arena fall silent had to bring back some flashbacks. So then that's another reason that it was just so impressive for him to come out here and try to play the explosive style that we've grown to know about him and that we've grown accustomed to, even after what he has seen and what he has gone through. So I'm excited. I know a lot of people were excited, even if the stat line again doesn't quite show it. 7 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. One last thing I want to get to, I'll hop back to Anthony Davis here, is how dominant he's becoming. Considering the short amount of time that it took for Davis to develop into an NBA-ready player, I mean, his junior year, between his sophomore and junior year, halfway through high school, when he shot up from 6'3" to 6'9", and then he had to probably develop a whole new set of skills, and then apparently he developed them fast enough for John Calipari to catch on and bring him to Kentucky, and then that was only 1 year, so he comes to New Orleans. So in the quick turnaround that Anthony Davis has become NBA ready, it's just been amazing, and people were expecting him to be a dominant player. Now, granted, this is one exhibition game for an international tournament, but if this is a preview of what Pelicans fans are going to see, I think that they have a lot to be excited about, not just in terms of watching him play in general, but just in terms of the Pelicans' playoff chances in what is already the competitive Western Conference. So that's what struck me on Friday watching the USA basketball team play. Like I said, their next 2 games in New York. I don't know who the opponents are that they're playing, even though they made them abundantly clear on the USA basketball telecast. I also don't know the dates either. I'm going to have to look those up for myself later, and you can also consult the internet as well to find out when those games are, because those are going to be fun. And this is going to be still a very good team, even without all the stars. Of course, this is America, so we're very deep in terms of our talent level, and that should be able to still carry us to pretty much gold at the World Championships. Not going to be easy, though, because the world is catching up, and they are all very talented, or else they wouldn't have this whole World Cup business. Speaking of a worldly sport, I want to move into soccer now. I know, it's weird. Follow me, though. I decided to make another sports season resolution. And now you know how New Year's resolutions usually work. The calendar turns, you're at the New Year's party, everybody's celebrating, the party favors, and you got the champagne, you make the toast, and you're like, this year, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this more. I'm going to do this less. I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to stop doing this. So New Year's resolutions, you know how those work. For me, and I'm probably not the only person that does this, I have sports season resolutions. And those aren't just restricted to New Year's. They come around anytime there is a new sports season ahead. I have been perpetually making NHL sports season resolutions where I resolve to watch more NHL hockey. Just something as simple as that. I'm going to keep up with the NHL. I have been perpetually making that same resolution since probably 2010. So, yeah. I can basically tell you that if I keep making a resolution, it hasn't been working. I've also made the same resolution with the WNBA, so much so that I'll go all in and I will purchase, thankfully it's a one-time payment, $12 for the WNBA Live Access. I did that this year with the expectation that I would keep up and be able to track the WNBA. That did not happen. Even when I fell behind, I figured that I would be able to watch, the games day by day until I was able to keep up with the rest of the season. I got through the first 5 games on opening night for the WNBA, and that was it. And the season is already ended. The playoffs begin on the 21st, and I've watched a total of 5 out of the 204 WNBA games that were played this season. So, who is the next victim of my sports season resolution? That would be the English Premier League. Yes, English football. That is what I am resolving to watch next. CFL also tends to be, in terms of foreign leagues, also tends to be one that I resolve. But I wasn't even going to try it this year. I'm just going to let this one slide and come back around. And then also arena football. I try to resolve to watch, but I'm not doing that until they get a Chicago team back. Hashtag bring back the rush. But this year, we're going to go with the English Premier League. Why? Because soccer is something that has interested me. It's intrigued me over the years. I'm not a big soccer junkie, but I understand the beauty behind it. It is a chess match on grass, is what it is. The tension is not in who can score more points in an allotted amount of time. It's who's going to be the one to break this stalemate each time. So you're not going to get basketball level scores. You're not even going to get modern hockey scores. But what you are going to get is a very good strategized match, especially in the European leagues. So you're going to get that 2-1, that we had a stalemate and we got by you once and we got by you twice. And it's a whole different type of thing, soccer, just in general, even on the international level. Of course, when the World Cup comes around, that tends to buoy my interest. That much is true. And then I've also tried to keep up with the domestic league just casually. Again, I didn't resolve to keep up with MLS, but, just casually. We have a local team here, the Fire, and they can be kind of frustrating. They tie a lot. For one of the main complaints with soccer for Americans is that they tie a lot. Chicago Fire are the epitome of that, so they can be a little frustrating. But with the Premier League and with soccer in general, it's a whole other game, and my level of interest has been there. It's been there. And so now I'm going to try to just push it to the next level. I'm going to try to go for it. I'm going all in this year. And so I'm going to try to keep up with the English Premier League. Their weekend, the reason I bring it up is that their opening weekend started on Saturday. Had a whole bunch of games then. As a matter of fact, there's another one today. And I'm sure Premier League fans are like, duh, we know that. You don't have to tell us. But with the opening weekend, I tried to watch as much as I could. Of course, NBC has a lot of the rights here. I don't know if Fox is still in on it or not, or if they chose to go with a different league or not. But NBC was all over it, at least this time around. There were 7 matches. You had Swansea beating Manchester United. Everton and Leicester City tied. You have Tottenham beating West Ham United. You have Hull beating Queen's Park Rangers. You have West Brom and Sunderland tying. You have Stoke and Aston Villa. Aston Villa winning 1-0. And then you have Arsenal beating Crystal Palace 2-1. And I tried to keep up, with it, but I had errands to run and I had to put some sleep in. This baseball tournament's been running me ragged. So I've been keeping some bizarre hours. So I tried to keep up as best as I could, and I would watch different games throughout the day. And as far as the style of play, which I just, of course, got done talking about, watching this was different than other soccer matches I saw. It seemed more fast-paced, which I can get behind. Even when it's not 5-4 or whatever, just the pace was something that I appreciated because there was urgency to it, even on this first weekend of what, to my understanding, is an absurdly long season. And it's not like, it doesn't seem like when I watch MLS or when I even stumble across other leagues, it seemed like there was more of an urgency to it. It seemed like there was more talent, to be quite straightforward. Like I try to appreciate MLS for what it is. It's an American league that's growing, and there's more people coming to it every year. But yeah, talent level is kind of lacking. And I think that's understood, throughout soccer circles. I don't appreciate people that like to dismiss the MLS just completely. There are flaws with it, of course, but it's working on it. Same thing with a lot of these other lower leagues that I watch, or like WNBA, for instance, where a lot of people like to scoff at it and just discard it. It's like, come on, man. You got to understand the perspective here and understand that it's developing. But with Premier League, not much development. It's top flight league in England, and if you aren't with it, you get dropped down, you get relegated. And I think that kind of helps with the sense of urgency, and that's something I can definitely get behind. Of course, coming into this, I don't know much about the game of soccer. I get the basics, but hey, I'll learn, and I'm willing to learn. I don't have any allegiances, of course. Honestly, when I read off those scores, I just did it off of my sports app. I'm surprised I even picked up on most of those teams. It got a little tricky there towards the end once I got towards the bottom. I think the West Brom kind of threw me off there. But everybody else, hey, I knew the names. I picked up. I got the lingo. But I don't have any allegiances. I'm just watching this neutrally. Maybe somebody will sway me. Maybe they won't. I'm just here for a good time, quite honestly. But I was just glad that I was able to enjoy it for what it was. The perception is that a lot of people just watch English league games, or they just watch German games or whatever. They just do it just to be soccer snobs and just to have something to look down on people with and stuff like that. But removed from that, just watching it on my own, I was able to appreciate it on my own for what it was. And that was the first week of play, and we'll see how it goes the rest of the way. I'm really excited to see what happens. I know how exciting it can be even with no playoffs. I don't freak out when there's no playoffs. I'm fine with that. And it was especially exciting. I think it was the end of the 2013 season, 2012-2013, where it came down to the final day. and I'm doing this off of memory. I can't quite remember all the situation, but I know it was a really exciting finish. And it was like I know the way they have it, they have games run simultaneously, on the last week of the year. And it was like one game, it was like there were certain games in play that were determining who would win the Premier League. And there was like one team scored a goal and another one did, and it looked like they were going to win the Premier League for that year. But then the other team came back and scored the goal in clutch time. I want to say Manchester City was involved. And I want to say that they were the ones that got that clutch goal. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments. By all means, I'm new to the game. I'm a new jack. I am not afraid of, being educated on the wonders that is European soccer. So let's go from football and let's close out here with football. College football here in America. And it's going to be very interesting for me here in the fall and leading into the winter, figuring out how to juggle Premier League soccer and American college football, because both of those tend to happen at the same time, to my understanding. Like, a lot of games happen on Saturday. Why wouldn't they? It's a great time. Everybody's off work and stuff in England. Same time, that's the same type of tradition we have here with college football. So trying to juggle all the teams that I want to watch in college football, we're trying to keep up with the Premier League as best I can. Going to be very interesting. College football is probably going to take precedent in terms of live watching, but hey, that's what we have the internet for. I get highlights. Maybe I can find some on-demand games. I don't know how that works. If I have to pay, I'm not paying. I'm just going to look at highlights and read up stuff. But yeah, I'm into Premier League, not that into it. I'm not shelling out the ducats just yet. But for college football, their season's coming up. I think it's 2 weeks. I think it starts at the end of, or it does start at the end of the month. I don't know the exact date. But the preseason poll is here, and 25 teams are somebody's now. And the top three reads: number 1, Florida State, the defending champion. Number 2, Alabama. And number 3, Oregon. Now, there's other people on that list. There's 22 others. Number 4 is Oklahoma, and number 5 is Ohio State. And then it just runs down from there. I'm not about to read the whole thing off, though, of course, I've not been above, in the history of me doing these types of podcasts, I have not been above listing off things for long amounts of time. Just not going to do it today. Nothing personal. But it's going to be very interesting for me with college football. College football is something that has also greatly interested me, because I always talk about how I like seeing teams come together, throwing them in a blender and seeing what happens. College football is ultimate blender teaming as you can get. It's the ultimate rush for me of putting teams together and seeing what happens, because college football teams have a limited amount of time to show their worth. The NFL is kind of the same thing, but it's 16 teams with playoffs. With college football, it's pretty much 12 games, and then you have, maybe the conference championship game, and then that's it. And then they throw you in bowls, and that's it. Like, if you're in the championship game, you're in there, and if you're not, you're not. And now with the college football playoff now starting this year, you have 4 teams going into the championship contention, and then everybody else is done. So again, you got 12 games pretty much, and then the conference championship. And I think that's just super. So I already resolved in our previous show that I was not going to do what I had planned to do, which was have a conference of teams that I'll follow like a beat reporter sort of, and just keep track of them in what I would call the Coliseum Conference. I figured that would kind of veer off from what I'm trying to do with the rest of SimsColiseum.com, and also because I keep my eye on so many teams for so many different reasons. So I'm not going to have that, but there are a bunch of teams that I'm just going to be keeping track of just because. For instance, here are the teams that I'm going to be looking at that have placed in the AP Top 25 poll. See if you can spot the pattern here. Number 3, Oregon. Number 7, UCLA. Number 15, USC. Number 19, Arizona State. Number 22, Nebraska. Number 24, Missouri. And number 25, Washington. Can you spot the pattern? If you guess that the majority of the teams are Pac-12 teams, you'll be correct. If you would guess that I chose the team that is from my home state, you're also correct. And then Missouri was a school that I got admitted to but didn't go to, so I still kind of keep up with them, sort of. So those are the teams I'm keeping track of. What can I say? I find the West Coast to be very fun and very exotic. So I like keeping track of the Pac-12 just in general in terms of sports. And that was part of the reason that ended up not having a Coliseum conference at all, because it was going to be very Pac-12 heavy. If you notice from the Coliseum baseball tournament that I am very California heavy. I took all 5 California teams and put them in the tournament. So I didn't want to do that again with the Coliseum conference and just with college teams. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep my eye on this. And I'll probably write game recaps throughout the season. But it's not just these teams that I'm going to be keeping my eye on that I'm incredibly excited about, especially with an exciting team like Oregon that, even without Chip Kelly, is still going like 90 miles per hour. But there are other teams outside of the poll that I'll be looking at as well, most notably my alma mater, Western Illinois University. They have a new scoreboard now, so that's awesome. They're in their second year under their new coach. So they may very well end up contending here in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. Another team that's not as related to me, that I don't have a connection to, the University of Houston and the Houston Cougars, because their offense has always intrigued me. If I'm not mistaken, they do like a sort of run and gun deal. I don't know. Whenever I watch a Houston game, it's always been kind of fun to watch. And then also they're getting a really new, awesome new stadium. So I want to see what that's all about. Maybe I can jump on the bandwagon. They got a new stadium. They wear a really cool color of red, really good shade of red. They're in an awesome city like Houston, although it can get hot and the bugs are really scary there. But yeah, hey, maybe I can hop on the bandwagon with them. We'll see though. They have their first game at the new stadium going to be on ESPN, or on the ESPN family of networks. So I'm definitely checking that out. How do I pass these savings down to you with all of these things that I'm keeping track of? Well, I'll be writing recaps and writing opinion pieces and stuff about all the stuff I'm seeing under the umbrella of the segment, His Eyes Are Watching Sports. So be sure to check that out on simscoliseum.com. It's going to be exciting stuff. I'll try to be funny with it. I'll try to be informative with it. And hopefully I can do both of those things. Now, before I close out, I wanted to explain what I meant by how polls also double as lightning rods. Well, as said before, the college football playoff begins this season. And the 4 teams that will be picked for the playoff are determined by a committee. And the upside, or the supposed upside to having this committee, is that they will not be swayed by computer polls and by other people's polls. It's going to be this committee of people, and I've seen the list. It's a bunch of very smart people, coming together, figuring it out, and then, coming up with the 4 that will get into this playoff, just like the NCAA tournament for basketball. And, those tend to at least go very well. There's always debate. There's always teams left out. And there's always teams that may, quote unquote, don't belong in there. But for the most part, people aren't really calling for an overthrow of the selection committee just yet, unless you are. If you are, let me know in the comments. But they're trying to do the same thing here with football. And so it's going to be, people ignoring the polls and making a decision amongst themselves. And hopefully that should work out. We'll find out in due time. So what does that mean for this poll? What does the AP Preseason Poll mean now if we're not going to go by it anymore? Well, nothing. It's discussion fodder now is what it is. And also, as the year goes on, the preseason poll just in general changes. There's been a lot of changes, especially over the years. It seems like parity has picked up a lot over the years, over the more recent ones. Uh, parity in terms of who places where in the poll later in the season. Of course, the SEC tends to just come out with the victory at the end of the day. But, you get through a season, you prove yourself in those 12 games or however many, and the polls tends to be completely unrecognizable compared to the preseason poll. And like I said, that was before the playoffs started. So the preseason poll back then didn't quite matter. It really won't matter now. But again, it brings good discussion. It's a lightning rod for people to talk about college football before college football begins. It's like lead-in programming for shows on network television or on cable television. It brings the hype, it brings the buzz, it brings people to start talking about it at the water cooler again, or at the kickback, or at the bar, or whatever, so that when the last weekend in August comes, people are already raring and ready to go. So the preseason poll on an existential level is worthless, but it still serves a very good purpose of getting people excited. It's gotten me excited. I'm sure the conversation's already being generated out there. I haven't dove into comments or into articles or anything, but I'm pretty sure people are just as excited as I am for college football to come back, and then just football in general to come back. And hey, we need to start enjoying college football now before the NCAA dismantles as we know it, because it's gonna happen. But hopefully we have a good season here of college football. It seemed last year was a little weak at times, so hopefully, we get a better one this year. And like I said, we might not have college football as we know it for much longer, so enjoy it while you can. So that'll do it for the Raymond Sims Show here for August 18th. I thank you for listening. If you scrolled through and skipped certain parts, or if you just, listen to the whole thing, I appreciate it all the same. And I'll be sure to see you on Mondays and Fridays, always here on the Coliseum Sports Network. Just as a reminder, go check out SimsColiseum.com. Check out Sims Coliseum on Twitter, Facebook, and Tumblr. And then be sure to like and subscribe here on the Coliseum Sports Network. I'll see you Friday. Have a good one.